Today, the average dividend yield of the REIT sector is quite low at 3.7%. This is because of three key reasons. Reason number one, payout ratios are quite low. REITs like to retain a lot of their cash flow to reinvest in growth and be less dependent on public capital markets. Then reason number two, most REITs invest in high growth sectors. These are properties like data centers, which will typically trade at low cap rates but have faster growth prospects. And then reason number three, REIT balance sheets are today the strongest ever. Lower leverage means greater safety, but it also means a lower yield. But fortunately, there are also some high-yielding REITs out there. Our portfolio at High Yield Landlord has a nearly 7% dividend yield. We achieve this high yield by being very selective. It's quite challenging to find high-yielding REITs that have a strong balance sheet, good management team, and a business model that's able to drive a lot of growth. What would be some examples of high-yielding REITs that we're buying today? Hey everyone, this is Yossi. I run an investment firm that specializes in REIT investing, and in today's video I want to highlight two REITs that have dividend yields approaching 10%. But before I get into it, if you could please like this video, it will help me a lot. Thank you very much. So the first REIT I want to discuss here is called EPR Properties. Its ticker symbol is EPR. Its dividend yield is today right around 9%. EPR is a net lease REIT just like Realty Income. Net lease properties are typically single-tenant, freestanding retail properties such as McDonald's fast food restaurants or Walgreens or CVS pharmacies or Dollar General grocery stores. You get the point. These are single-tenant or freestanding properties, typically with a service orientation. These can be very attractive real estate investments because the lease is typically structured very favorably to the landlord, and that's why we call them net leases or even triple net leases. What I mean by this is that the lease is going to be really long, at over 10 years in most cases. The tenant is going to be responsible for all the property expenses, even the insurance, the property taxes, even the maintenance of the property. Then the lease will also include some annual rent escalations that are already agreed in the contract. These are typically 1 to 2%, which may not seem really high, but since the tenant is covering all the property expenses, this really falls down to the bottom line. Then most of these net lease properties are recession resistant also, because the rent coverage is going to be high at 2 to 3 times, which means that the tenant is able to generate ample profits to pay its rent, and even if its profits come down a bit, there is still a good margin of safety. And then finally, these are technology resistant properties as well in most cases, because again, these are service oriented properties. Dollar General convenience stores, as a good example, will probably still have them around 30 years from now. And so net lease properties can be really rewarding, and Realty Income is a good example of that. It has compounded investors' capital at roughly 15% per year since going public a few decades ago. It has also managed to consistently hike its dividend every year. It's simply a business model that can result in high risk-adjusted returns when implemented correctly. And it just happens that one of my favorite net lease REITs is EPR Properties. EPR Property is a net lease REIT that takes a specialization in experiential properties. So good examples here will be water parks, amusement parks, ski areas, golf complexes, and high-quality movie theaters. EPR intentionally focuses on these niches of the net lease market because they are a lot less competitive, and it allows it to earn even higher risk-adjusted returns. Individually, these properties will typically be riskier than most other net lease properties, but once EPR buys them and includes them in a well-diversified portfolio, it's able to mitigate the risks and earn the higher returns. In most cases, its properties will have higher cap rates, so if Realty Income is buying a Dollar General at a 5.5% cap rate, EPR might buy a water park at an 8% cap rate instead. Then it will also have higher rent escalations. So again, Realty Income will typically have 1% rent escalations each year. EPR has closer to 2%. Then its leases will also be longer, mitigating the risk of vacancy. Its lease is also true triple net, which means that the tenant is really responsible for all the property expenses. Other net lease REITs will often have double net leases, which means that the landlord will be responsible for some of the expenses, such as the roof or the structure or the parking lot, as an example. And so because of all of this, EPR has historically been able to massively outperform the average of the REIT sector by following this niche investment strategy in the net lease sector. Historically, the market has also rewarded EPR with a healthy valuation because its strategy is so rewarding, but But this changed with the pandemic. Its properties suffered a lot early on because of the social distancing guidelines, and understandably this caused a lot of stress on the financials of its tenants that then in many cases skipped rent payments, and it hurt EPR's market sentiment and it still hasn't recovered from there. This also explains why EPR is today priced at such a high dividend yield of 9% and just roughly 8 times its FFO, a 35% discount to its net asset value. This is a very low valuation for a high quality REIT. But here's why I think that the market is wrong to price EPR at such a low valuation and such a high yield. Today we've moved past the pandemic and EPR's properties have nicely recovered. Today most of its properties have a rent coverage ratio of nearly 3 times. That's quite a bit higher than even before the pandemic, and this is because today consumers want to go out and they want to seek experiences in the post-COVID world. During the pandemic, people spent a lot of money on goods. Today they are spending a lot of money on experiences like going to the water park, going to the amusement park, and so this benefits EPR's tenants who are able to nicely cover their rent with ample profits. Today there is still just one segment of EPR's portfolio that's struggling, and that's movie theaters. Their rent coverage hasn't fully recovered. It's currently at 1.4 times, which is quite a bit lower than before the pandemic. That's because we haven't had many blockbuster movies in recent years. The box office is yet to recover, and so this is causing quite a lot of stress on some of EPR's tenants like AMC, Cinemark, Regal, and this is causing the market to worry a lot. But here's why I think that the market is overreacting. Reason number one, EPR owns some of the most productive movie theaters in the nation. Yes, we might have too many movie theaters, there might be some oversupply, but what this only means is that the lower quality theaters will die down, and this would actually benefit EPR's properties as this would lead to some traffic consolidation. Reason number two, the rent coverage has already recovered to 1.4, which means that its tenants are profitable at the property level. Yes, they are still struggling because in most cases they have a lot of debt, but the point here is that they are already able to turn a profit after paying EPR's rent, and things will only get better from here. Reason number three, it's good to remember that EPR is the landlord, not the operator of these theaters, and so it earns steady rent checks from long-term leases and it always gets paid first. As such, you don't need to be incredibly bullish on the movie theater sector, you just need to be bullish enough that its tenants are able to turn a small profit so that they can pay EPR's rent. Reason number four, something that we learned from the pandemic is that blockbuster movies simply cannot be monetized in any other way than theaters. All these big studio producers like Paramount, Warner's, or Disney, they gave it a try and they came to the realization that it just simply doesn't work. And this is because once you put a movie online, it gets immediately pirated, streamed for free, and then even if people pay for the movie, in most cases it will be one person paying for it and then the friends or the family will watch for free. Therefore, if you like big movies like the recent Top Gun movie, you'll simply have to go to theaters to see them. And then final reason, now since all these studios came to this realization, they're also now really doubling down on their theater strategies and starting to pour a lot more money on producing more blockbusters, and so I expect rent coverage ratios to continue their recovery in the coming quarters. But the nice thing here is that even if I'm wrong, it's not the end of the world. The movie theaters make up only about 25% of EPR's portfolio as measured by NAV. Most of these properties are doing really well, then some others could be converted into other uses if needed, and then some others could be arguably more valuable empty than occupied because they have better other uses. And so I simply don't think that it makes sense to discount the entire company so heavily because of worries concerning one segment of its portfolio, which is actually doing quite well and expected to keep producing a lot of cash flow in the coming decade. I don't think that movie theaters are going anywhere. I've put a lot of work analyzing this sector. Let me know in the comment section below if you disagree. I'm happy to hear your argument. But again, the reality is that Netflix didn't kill theaters. The pandemic didn't kill theaters. Box office was at an all-time high before the pandemic, despite more than half of households having a Netflix account already. Now the box office numbers are already strongly recovering and studios have come to the realization that theaters are needed, and so I'm simply not so concerned about this sector. Yet today you get to buy EPR at a 9% dividend yield. This is coming from a REIT that has an investment grade rated balance sheet, a track record of market outperformance, a strong balance sheet, and a strategy that's going to drive growth going forward. Then the second REIT I want to highlight here is called Global Medical REIT. It's yielding even more at 9.4% at the moment. I'll keep this one a lot shorter because the thesis is a lot easier to understand. This is a small cap REIT that specializes in medical office buildings. Medical office buildings are some of the safest properties out there investor because your tenants are doctors and doctors are just great tenants. Their businesses are recession proof, the demand for healthcare is always increasing because of the rapidly aging population, and then doctors just pay always on time and fully their rent because their properties are essential to the businesses they run. It's also important to note here that the rent coverage ratios are particularly high for medical office buildings. Global Medical REIT has a near 5 times rent coverage ratio. Earlier we talked about EPR Properties and we said that a large portion of its portfolio has a 3 times rent coverage ratio, and we thought that this was really good. Well, Global Medical is at 5 times, so it has even greater margin of safety between the profit generated by the tenant and the rent owed to the landlord. But despite that, the share price of Global Medical REIT has dropped very significantly over the past year, and as a result it's now priced at such a high dividend yield. I think that dropped so much because of a simple misconception. The REIT market is failing to differentiate between the risk profiles of medical office buildings and other healthcare properties. There are other REITs that invest today in skilled nursing properties, in senior housing, in hospitals, and the REIT market just is struggling to understand the differences between these property types. I feel like investors will often think of all these REITs that invest in these properties as healthcare REITs. They will put them in one basket, and as a result they will trade very similarly despite having very different risk profiles. Just to give you a few examples, skilled nursing properties have a rent coverage ratio of just 1.2 times, so that's very low. It leaves very little room for error, and so understandably the REITs that invest in skilled nursing properties should trade at high dividend yield and low valuations. Then similarly, hospitals are today going through a lot of difficulties because of labor shortages, and the labor cost has really spiked up a bit, and operating hospitals is already a low margin business, and as a result now Medical Properties Trust, which is the biggest hospital REIT, it's struggling to collect rent from some of its tenants, and understandably it's causing the market to worry. Global Medical REIT isn't faced with these same problems because again it's investing in safer properties, and yet if you look at its share price you'll note that it's been dropping almost in lockstep with Medical Properties Trust, which invests in riskier hospitals. I think that this is an opportunity. Global Medical REIT is now priced at roughly 9 times its FFO, an estimated 30% discount to its net asset value, and it offers a 9.4% dividend yield, which we think is sustainable. Now this doesn't mean that Global Medical REIT is perfect. This is a small cap REIT, it uses a bit more leverage than average, and it also focuses on some secondary markets which could be more impacted by oversupply if and when more traditional office buildings are converted into medical office buildings. But at today's valuation I just like the risk reward a lot. I think that as the market sentiment for healthcare properties improve from here, the REIT will experience a lot of upside, and while you wait to earn this near 10% dividend yield. So these are 2 high yielding REITs that I'm buying today. Feel free to join my REIT newsletter for a 2-week free trial if you want to access the rest of my portfolio. As I mentioned earlier, its average dividend yield is roughly 7%. And finally, if you enjoyed this video, it will really help me a lot if you could please put a like on it. It will help me put this video in front of more people and help me grow this channel. Thank you very much, and see you at my next video. Bye bye.